Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very senior and accomplished marketer from Dubai, UAE, Namrata Balwani. Namrata, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. Namrata is the Chief Marketing Officer, is a CMO Consultant. She has previously headed digital marketing and customer analytics at the Landmark Group. So, Namrata, before we start talking about marketing, tell me a little bit about your own journey in brief.
Sure. It's been quite interesting because the way I approach life is to take risk and see what the result is. So mini risks, not big risks. I started my career in advertising. I'm a graduate of MICA, so went in from campus placement into advertising. Eventually, I was at Group M, and Group M was formed in India, so I was part of Maxis. And then somewhere in 2005, I got this opportunity to co-found a digital agency. This was called Media to Win. So I did that from 2005 to 2015. That was a good decade. We built it from two people or two co-founders to a team with 40 plus people, 3 cities, lots of great clients working with us, many of whom we brought onto digital for the first time because that was the early days. And then once that happened, I think I did face some bit of burnout. It's very hard being an entrepreneur for 10 years. And I decided to take a mini break, like 5-6 months, and then found myself at Ogilvy in Gurgaon. So I moved cities, which was a big deal for me. I've always been in Mumbai. So moving to Gurgaon was interesting, challenging, and then being part of Ogilvy, which is a massive group with so much learning on brand and digital. So I was heading the digital team, but I got this opportunity to come to Dubai to the Landmark Group, and I decided, why not take another risk, different kind of role, not agency, different city, and I've been here ever since. But since 2020 or 2019, actually, just before the COVID lockdown started, I decided to become an independent consultant. Very weird timing because obviously for 6 months of lockdown, I was like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
But things have changed since then. And it's great to be here. It's great to work with a lot of brands. Today, I work a lot more with B2B and technology brands, and it's really fun to take a piece of technology and turn it into a brand story and an emotional piece.
How wonderful. And when I was reading about you, you state that you're at the intersection of business, marketing, data, and technology. Help me understand this, and if possible, give me an example.
Sure. What about is when you're on the advertising side, or at least that's what I felt. When I'm on the advertising side, I'm looking at marketing from a very specific lens. And then when I moved into Landmark, obviously it was a huge learning experience to say, how do we translate what we've learned about marketing from an advertising perspective to now being part of an organization and translating an organizational goals, the business goals, into very hard realities of what does it mean for marketing to drive which KPIs. And to use those KPIs, obviously an organization like Landmark, which has been traditionally a very large but legacy retailer, have changed and digitally transformed themselves. And that's where the role of data and technology comes in. So it was really saying, putting all this together, marketing is about taking business goals and translating them into how much does marketing influence them, and then using a certain level of transparency and using the power of data and technology to make your marketing more effective for revenue generation.
Well said.
That's what that means.
So our next question is, how do you define digital transformation and why is it important? Why do companies need to go through this?
Today, it's inevitable. The reason being that no matter what industry a company is in, there is so much to track, so much data, so many processes, so much efficiency that can be built in that without using the power of technology and without using the power of data, it's not possible, in my opinion, to be as efficient or as productive or as far forward in your industry as possible. So digital transformation is not really only about digital marketing or digitalization, as it's conventionally called. So it's more about how do we take our company and the root of our business and say, does digital or technology play a role at the heart of our business? Are we able to create even a new business model in an industry that's stagnating? And how do we take the power of data and tech, not only in marketing efforts, but across the organization, whether it's supply chain, it's operations, it's sales, it's people management. And so any company that embarks on digital transformation is doing it simply because they believe that we can better our products for our customers if we adopt technology that helps us achieve certain goals.
Interesting. And what would you say are some of the key elements of a successful digital marketing strategy?
From a digital marketing perspective, I'll say we start at the heart of it, which is what are the business goals? And then what is the role of digital marketing within the marketing framework? What are the KPIs one expects digital to achieve, but how does it interplay with other media, maybe offline, maybe online, whatever it might be? How do they all come together? And then when you build out a digital marketing strategy, it's simply about saying, what's our customer journey? What is the stage at which we believe we want interventions in this customer journey? Where do we plan digital? And then that translates into what channels, specifically, what is it? Content? Is it search? Is it paid marketing, whatever it might be? And how do we then build that out to say every interaction with our customer from a digital perspective, we are able to tie back into what did that customer do for us as a brand? Did they buy? So did we acquire a new customer? Did we retain a customer? Did we build loyalty?
And could you also talk a little bit about the role of data in digital marketing and how can it drive decision making?
So I think that's interesting because there's a certain thinking that says, is it data that drives decision making or is it data that simply informs? Because it's the marketer's knowledge, experience, data, all of which come together when you say decision making, right? So I would say data influences decision making, may not necessarily drive it every time. But the reason why it's important to look at data is because today we get customers interact with brands in millions of ways in a day, right? So you could have 20 brands talking to you in a day or 100 brands talking to you in a day, and you put out certain signals, and these signals are basically whether you interact with a brand, whether you click on something, you perform an action, you don't perform an action. And these are all things that as marketers we map to try and understand who are most influential customers are, or who are the most predisposed to buy our products, and so on and so forth. And so when you look at the role of data in digital, it's not only about the metrics that are performed on a channel, which is like, the views, the clicks, the conversions, but it's also about signals and understanding who are our most profitable customers, or how do we find more customers like them. So the role of data really is not conventionally, and I remember 10, 12 years ago when we built marketing dashboards, these were all individual pieces of information. This is the performance on search. This is the performance on social media and so on. But today it's really important to integrate all of that, get a single view of the customer so that you're able to even predict lifetime customer value.
Well said. Can you also talk about the role of content in digital marketing and how does an organization or a brand create a strong content strategy?
The way, and I've written a lot about this even on my LinkedIn, is the way to build a good content strategy is to first understand what does your brand stand for. So if you don't have a strong brand voice, brand personality, brand values, a reason why customers should find you or purchase your brand, then what you ultimately put out on content is going to be a bunch of tactics, right? And content marketing today has become for many brands, hundreds of messages you put out in a year and not even one of them is memorable. So that's a certain challenge that we have. If you look at content marketing as how does it further my brand voice? What do I want to tell customers about my brand? Even if you do 10 pieces of communication in a year that are memorable, it's far better than doing 100 that nobody remembers.
Right. Well said. My next question to you is about how you see the future of digital marketing evolving and what trends should brands and marketers be paying attention to?
I think the word digital in marketing just to be taken off because today everything is marketing.
Correct.
And digital forms the heart of how you market to customers in many, many industries. So certainly there are some industries where digital may not be still as prevalent as other forms. But overall, I'll say there's no real reason to attach the word digital to it. It's really about, as I said, starting from a customer journey and saying which media, which channels are important for me, for what stage of driving what in customer action. But if you look at the way the trends are moving, obviously today the hot topic is AI because of ChatGPT and how everyone's excited. I think we still have ways to go in, using it beyond content creation. So there's a lot of work happening with ChatGPT and AI on content creation, but there are many, many tools now evolving to other things. But having said that, AI and machine learning are certainly important because they help us make sense of reams and reams of information, which is simply impossible to do manually anymore. And the power of that is also saying, if I look at it just from putting out communication, is to say, if this is my customer, this is the stage they're at, this is what they're interested in, I'm going to serve them a completely personalized piece of creative, right? That actually speaks to the heart of what would influence them. Now, certainly we've been doing all this for a while, but the layer that AI is adding on it is a much more in-depth way of understanding how do I influence this customer, and perhaps putting out lots of different messages in microseconds to understand what works. So AI and ML definitely, and that also goes back to all the marketing metrics and how we can track what level marketing is influencing. The second one, which I don't think is ever going to go out of style, is creativity. I think it's all the more important. And for me, somewhere people tend to forget that creativity is the heart of why a customer would want to come to you, because that's how you build your brand story. So even with the advent of machine learning and with the advent of artificial intelligence, we still need good old human creativity to build our brands.
Well said.
And then the third one, which I think is important and maybe somewhere has gotten a little lost, is the power of voice. And like you've spoken about podcasts, you've spoken about how you've taken it on different channels. And is TikTok even social media? To me, TikTok or any other competitor to TikTok, like Chingari, for example, is content creation using voice and visual. But it's just the power of that, the power of voice search, and how much more we are using voice to do things rather than type. That's the third thing that I think is going to continue to emerge.
Interesting. Then there's this entire other word or buzzword, which is MarTech or marketing technology. What are some of the best practices for integrating data privacy and security into digital marketing and the marketing technology efforts?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because data privacy and security worldwide is at different stages. We see Europe, which is at a very, very advanced stage. And then perhaps we see the Middle East, which has started out, but there's a lot of progress now being made in the area of security. At the end of it, it's really about saying, how do we protect our customer? How do we not use invasive methods? And if we are not using invasive methods, or if we are trying to protect their data, what are the kind of tools and technology setup that we need, even to protect the data from our own employees and to prevent that data from being misused or leaked or any of those things? And MarTech definitely has a role to play, because ultimately most comms that companies send out to their own customers come MarTech tools, and that's how they are sent out. But those tools have to abide by or have the proper setup in their own cloud and their stacks to make sure that the data is secure. So it's certainly a really, really important part of marketing. And it's something I think conventionally marketers are not people who know a lot about data privacy, but it's a technical skill set that's increasingly important.
And MarTech is getting increasingly complex now. So how do businesses really navigate this increased complexity and choose the right tools? I mean, other than, of course, coming to Namrata and taking advice, what are some of the issues that marketers should be careful about?
The one thing that usually a lot of people come to me and just say, hey, I want your advice. What kind of CRM tool should I take? And I usually go back by saying, what's your business objective?
Correct.
What's your marketing objective? How are you tracking your customer journey? What are you going to do with the data of this customer from the time you start collecting it to the time you're able to actually send meaningful marketing messages? And how or where do you want your tools to integrate with everything else in your organization? And then decide, these are my use cases, this is what I need, and this is the tool that delivers the best. Because if you look at, and Scott Brinker puts out his MarTech landscape every year, there are 7,000 plus MarTech tools in play, and all of them doing many different things at different aspects of the funnel. Right. So it's virtually impossible to understand all tools. It's more important to understand what is the objective that I'm trying to achieve and how do tools best integrate that. And the second thing is to not fall for the shiny new thing. Sometimes you get excited when a company comes to you and does a demo and you're very excited by the tool, you take on the tool, then you don't have a plan to integrate it, or you don't have a plan to who's going to manage it. And you don't set any metrics for how do we know if this tool is working for us. And those are dangerous grounds. The other thing I'll say is we've gone through a lot of transition from, there was a time when, it was like a single organization having tying up with another single large organization and having a stack that is one company providing tools at every level or every stage of the funnel, right? So you would take a sales cloud, loyalty cloud, marketing cloud, whatever it might be. Then it came to know, but all these tools may not be optimal. We need a best of breed in every function. Correct. So you would take a CRM from somewhere and notifications from somewhere and so on. But that also created so much complexity on integration that today a lot of the trend is going back to having single company, single, let's say, ownership with one organization and tools across and taking the full suite. So these are interesting changes that are happening. But overall, I'll say if you want to understand what is the tool I want, to go back to what do you want to achieve and understand how you're going to resource it and how you're going to achieve value out of it.
Thank you. Great response. An unrelated topic to the flow that we had is the metaverse. And I wanted to get your perspective on the metaverse because a lot of brands invested a lot of money, and some of the big brands like Nike, etc., even started acquiring a lot of assets in the metaverse. And now suddenly the buzzword of metaverse seems to have fizzled out. I'd love to get your perspective on what was happening and why has it suddenly disappeared?
That's interesting. And it's also, I guess, the hype cycle somewhere answers that question. I also think that a lot of things in tech are cycles, and we see it. Today, AI is the buzzword, and maybe in 2 years' time, we'll be talking about something else. Having said that, I think the metaverse, or the vision for the metaverse was an interesting vision, but perhaps today with the technology and what it costs to create that vision, it's a bit early. We've seen that we had Second Life 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and then it came to the metaverse, which has also somehow died, hypothetically speaking. But I'm quite sure that we'll see a resurgence on that, because the idea of building a credible digital world is really, really appealing for a lot of people. And if you just see the success of e-gaming, you would know that there are loads of people who want to live in different worlds, right? And so certainly there's a predisposition for that somewhere in the ecosystem, but it's a question of whether it can look and feel as good as the promise, which is where we are not today.
Well said. My next question is that how important, in your opinion, is it for companies to invest in upskilling their employees to stay competitive in the digital landscape?
That's really interesting because, just a couple of days before I posted about the Future of Jobs 2023, really interesting report that came out that says that maybe 2% of world jobs will no longer exist in 5 years' time. And the reason for that was a lot of the jobs that are clerical, administrative, and so on are being foreseen as being taken over by more technology. But having said that, there are a lot of areas that are growing. Green technology or climate change, or working in that area of sustainable is an important one that's growing. Obviously, fintech is something that's growing. AI and ML is growing. So if you look at what we conventionally thought of as jobs, it changes every 5 years. There are jobs that exist today that didn't even exist 5 years ago. I would expect the same thing to happen. And so reskilling employees is really, really important, because a lot of the manual work, when it gets taken over by technology, people have mind space freed up that they can use for other things. If they are skilled in it. It doesn't matter what age it is, right? Whether we've spent 25 years in the business or we've spent 1 year in the business, we have to continually reskill ourselves.
Interesting. So, Namrata, I have 2 more questions for you. My next question is that can you share a few examples of some brands that have successfully negotiated this incredible transformation to digital?
I think a lot of brands have done a lot of work, even though a lot of studies show that many digital transformation efforts fail. There are brands that have truly taken it. And when we look at digital transformation, we are very much talking about an organization that was perhaps earlier traditional, in a traditional mode of selling, and today has used technology to transform. And I think Nike is one of the most furthest examples of that. Just the idea that you can walk into a Nike store, order stuff off the app, have someone come, you can try on the shoes, and if you like, you pay on the app and you walk out. I mean, you didn't need to hypothetically walk into a store, but the purpose of walking into the store is the whole experience of it, right? And then Nike has done lots of other things. This is just one example. So I'll say that's one that stands out to me a lot. Within this region, I think if you look at a lot of the larger retailers, like Majid Al Futtaim is a really large retailer in this space. They've done spades and spades of work on digital transformation and using data for better advancement of customers and for loyalty. And certainly the second one from a regional perspective. And I would also say that when you regional CPG players, like for example, a Coca-Cola, there's a lot of work that Coca-Cola is doing on building their own data and tech, even though they may not have cracked it completely. But I think there's a lot of interesting work there as well.
Well said. And my last question to Namrata, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. A lot of them are also startup entrepreneurs or aspiring startup entrepreneurs. Based on your own amazing understanding of marketing and digital marketing, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want a startup founder to take away from our conversation and all that you know?
The first thing is build your brand. And there is no stage at which you start building a brand. The day you launch your startup, you start thinking about what does your brand stand. The second one is to start tracking customer data from the get-go. Sometimes I receive this question, which is, if we have only 100 customers, do we need a CRM solution? I mean, there's no stage at which you need a solution. You just need it because it fulfills a purpose. And the third one is just to start startups reinvent themselves. Marketing also needs to reinvent itself continually. It's not only about performance marketing or paid marketing. Look at marketing across the funnel and apply that.
Wonderful. And on that note, and your wonderful lessons, build your brand now. Start thinking of, start tracking customer data. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey, about so many different aspects of digital marketing. I learned so many new things from you today. Thank you also for talking to me about how AI and ML are so critical and so important, and how they are really the technologies of the future. Thank you for speaking to me, Namrata, and good luck to you.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.